Okay, you're good.
Welcome to our study Replication. This is done by Morgan Peterson, Brittany Chauvin, Daniel Keenan, and Kayla Skilaba. We replicated a study that was looking to increase physical fitness while decreasing media usage, and also using media usage as a contingent reinforcement on exercise. The original study, the primary goal of the present study was to encourage a lifestyle change involving more physical exercise by the participant, while simultaneously having the participant take more personal responsibility for being physically fit. The secondary goal of the present study aimed to reduce the amount of time a child spent on the internet and using her cell phone. It was a single case design, and it was done by D. Larwin and K. Larwin in 2008. Our replicated study, the purpose of our study was to encourage 4 college students to increase their physical exercise and decrease media usage not related to work or school, while simultaneously getting them to take more personal responsibility for being physically fit. We have some behavioral definitions that we set up for our study. Exercise was any occurrence of walking at a comfortable pace, and comfortable pace was individually determined on a treadmill. Speed was the rate at which someone or something is able to move or operate. We define distance as the amount of space between 2 places or things, a point or place that is far away from another point or place. And we defined internet or phone usage as, so in the original study, the measurement was expressed in bytes, kilobytes, megabytes, or gigabytes. And it was measured at the amount of data flowing through the computer and internet network for a defined period. In our replication, we did time instead of gigabytes or bytes. We measured time in minutes that we used our phone or internet for non-school or work activities. Our baseline data, the behavior was walking on a treadmill. The definition was constant walking movement on a treadmill at a pace that allows the person to hold a conversation. And the measurement system that we used was distance and intensity. Intensity was measured in speed in miles per hour. Phase 1 was internet and phone usage contingent on walking a minimum of 1 mile. So the behavior was walking on a treadmill for a minimum of 1 mile. Definition was constant movement on a treadmill at a pace that allows the person to hold a conversation, and the measurement system was once again distance and speed. It was internet and phone usage contingent on walking a minimum of 1.5 miles. So the behavior was walking on a treadmill for a minimum of 1.5 miles, and the definition and measurement system remain the same for the second phase as the first phase. For data collection, the original study looked at body mass composition. Event recording was used to record distance of miles traveled, and event recording was also used for average speed walked in miles per hour. Duration recording was also taken for minutes of internet and phone usage. In our replicated study, we used weight in pounds rather than the body mass composition, and all of our other measurements were the same. We used event recording for miles, event recording for speed, and duration recording for our internet and our phone usage. This is the data sheet we used. We took weight every 3 days, and then we did our distance, our speed, and our internet and phone usage every day throughout the study. And next, we will be talking about our methods including the participants and setting.
Okay, so for participants and settings, in the original study, there was one participant, a female. She was 14 years old, referred by a counselor and physician for unhappiness in her physical appearance, and the study took place in that participant's home. For our study, we had 4 participants, 1 male, 3 females, which was Dan, Morgan, Kayla, and myself. And our age range was about 25 to 34 years old, and our study also took place in our homes. As far as the materials needed in the original study, there was a Bowflex tread climber, which was used as an incline treadmill, and then a Tanita inner scan body composition monitor to measure weight. There's a data sheet, cell phone, and a computer. And in our study, we just used a treadmill, a scale for our weight, data sheet, cell phone, and computer. And then next is designs. In the original study, they used a single subject design. Their baseline took place over 14 days. Their phase 1 also took place over 14 days, which was the hour of internet for a 1 mile walked, and then you got 1 hour of internet for each additional mile walked. In phase 2, it took place over 21 days, and that was the 1.5 hours of internet or phone usage for 1.5 miles walked. And then for every additional half a mile that you walked, you would get a half hour of phone or internet time. And in our study, we also used a single subject design. However, our baseline was only 7 days compared to their 14. Our phase 1 was the same, 14 days. And then our phase 2 was 14 days instead of the 21 days. And then next we have baseline.
So I'm going to share baseline data. In the original study, we had 1 participant, and she, in the baseline, she recorded her internet and phone usage in the minutes as well as the gigabytes. She used a frequency count for recording the number of sessions that the treadmill climber was used per week. She recorded the speed, which was based on the preferred setting of herself, as well as the distance that was recorded based on how many miles she walked per session. Every 3 days, body mass was measured and recorded. In our study, we recorded our internet and phone usage in minutes. We also recorded the speed based on individual preference, and distance was also recorded as if hers. In our study, we did not record the frequency. It just seemed a little redundant where if we were stating how many miles we had walked that day or the speed that we had walked, that was in itself a frequency count that we had walked that day. And then we also changed our, we recorded our weight every 3 days just because we did not have access to the body composition system that she used in her study. During treatment, prior to treatment phase 1, both the participant in the original study was given a data sheet along with her parents. Her parents collected data alongside of her for IOA. She was encouraged to walk 5 out of the 7 days, and she did not have access to the internet on the days she didn't walk. So her days went Monday through Friday. She was encouraged to walk all 5 of those days. If she didn't walk, she didn't get internet access. But she also did not have free access to the internet over the weekend if she chose not to walk those 2 days. Every mile that she walked, she received 1 hour of internet time, and an additional hour of internet time was given for each additional mile walk. Internet was only given in mile increments. So for example, if she walked 1.7 miles one day, she was only given an hour. She had to reach that second mile if she was going to get an additional hour of time. For the original study, if her BMC was reduced by 3 minutes, the participant was given $100 for a purchase of her choice. They chose to do this in the original study to have the lowering of her BMC act as a natural reinforcement. So they thought after giving her $100 and she started, that was the original reinforcement. But once she started to lose those 3 units and she was losing inches on her waist, that she would be happy with her appearance and she would keep losing it and keep with the study based on her performance, which was a natural reinforcement. In our study, we were also encouraged to walk 5 out of the 7 days a week. No internet access was given on any missed days, which once we get to our data, you'll see that none of us really missed any days. We walked 1 mile and received 1 hour of internet time, as she did in the study. Additional hours were given based on the mile increments as well. And as in the original study and ours, we could not roll over time to another day. So if we finished our exercise late at night and we had earned an hour of internet time, but it was time for bed, we could not roll that internet time over into the following day. And our body weight was reduced by 3 days. We would be given $20, or by 3 pounds, we would be given $20 for a purchase of our choice. We didn't have access to $100 as she did. In the original study, the participant recorded her phone usage during phase 1 because phone was not a reinforcement at that time, and we mimicked that as well. During treatment phase 2, the participant was still encouraged to walk those 5 days and was not given internet access or phone access on the days she didn't walk. So in treatment phase 2, we now have added in phone time. In treatment phase 1, we were only allowed to, in the original study and our replicated study, we were only allowed to be reinforced with access to the internet an additional time. Our phone was not available during this time. You'll notice in treatment phase 2 that we increased, in the original study, the miles increased as well as the reinforcement that was given. So for every 1.5 mile walk, the participant would receive 1.5 hours of internet or phone time. That first 1.5 hours was to be split however she wanted. If she wanted 1 hour of internet time and 1/2 hour of phone, or whatever she chose. For every additional 1/2 mile walk, she was given 1/2 hour of phone time. She could not earn more internet time. So if she walked 2 miles, she would be given 1.5 hours of internet and or phone time, along with an additional 30 minutes of just phone time. In treatment phase 2, the times also could not be rolled over to the next day. And they continued in treatment phase 2 with the BMC reducing by 3 minutes, and she was allowed $100 for a purchase of her choice. As you can see, our replicated study, we mimicked this exactly. So we were encouraged to walk those 5 days. We were not allowed access to the internet or the phone, which was in our behavioral definition. Our phone usage was non-school or non-work related. We were encouraged to walk 1.5 miles and received 1.5 hours of internet time. Additional phone time was given, and it could not be rolled over. And our body weight was reduced by 3 pounds. We were given $20 for a purchase of our choice. So now we will look at our results. So here are my results. As you can see at baseline, my range is between 0 and 0.62 miles. This is miles walked on the treadmill only. And I was averaging about 0.11 miles during the baseline phase. During phase 1, which I was given 1 hour of internet time for every mile walk, my range was between 0.63 and 4.2 with an average of 2 miles a day. So you can see quite an increase there. I went up almost 2 miles, about 1.9 miles on a daily average in order to receive that access to the internet. During the next phase, 1.5 hours of internet or TV or phone time was given. The range for this one was 2.1 and 3.5 miles. So just a slight increase in here. I went up 0.7 miles for that one. Here are the results for daily speed. So originally, since I wasn't really using it much. My speed was fairly low. I was at like 0.8 miles per hour, just a very slow pace, not really going very far, with an average of 1.4 miles an hour. During the first phase of 1 hour internet time, my range was between 1 and 1.7 with an average of 1.4. And this actually did not change based on mine personally, based on the next phase. So when I was receiving an hour and a half, I still had the exact same range and the exact same average, which was fairly interesting. Here we have our body weight. So as you recall, we were trying to lose 3 pounds in order to get access to, for $20 for access to something. My range at baseline was 142 to 143 with an average of 142.5 pounds. With 1 hour of internet, you could see that's gone down a little bit. My range was a little wider, so I was now at 139 between 144 with an average of 141, so down 1.2 or 1.5 pounds. And then from there to an hour and a half of internet or phone time, I was down an additional 3 pounds. So I received access to the $20 only 1 time. And here you will see my daily average of phone and internet usage. And as we had stated in our definition, this is non-school and non-related. So it's pretty much personal phone time that we're using or internet time. At baseline, I was at about 87. So you could see that drops pretty substantial, or about pretty substantially between treatment phase 1. And I actually had an increase in internet usage between phase 1 and phase 2, which was interesting. I also had a decrease between my baseline and treatment phase 1 for phone usage, and then that went back up based on treatment phase 2. And now we will have Dan share his results.
Dan, could you unmute your microphone?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll go ahead and say that again. Okay, so for my distance walked, my baseline, I wasn't using a treadmill before we started the treatment phase, so it was at 0 miles and my range was 0. My phase 1 for 1 hour internet, you see a large increase in my distance walked once the contingency was added. My average was 1.46 miles, and my range was 1 to 1.7 miles walked per day. And once we moved to phase 2, which is the 1.5 hours of internet or phone for each 1.5 miles walked, it really took a big jump. My average went from 1.46 in phase 1 to 2.25 miles in phase 2, and my range was 1.8 miles to 2.6 miles per day. Next, we'll look at my walking speed. Once again, baseline was 0 range for average and range. I wasn't doing it before we began treatment. So when we added treatment phase 1, the 1 hour of internet, my average speed was 2.54 miles per hour, and the range was anywhere from 2 miles per hour to 3.1 miles per hour. And then it was kind of interesting. I thought when I began walking the 1.5 miles that my speed would go down because it was a further distance, or it was more distance, but I must have adapted and gotten better shape throughout phase 1, because During the second treatment phase, my average was 3.42 miles per hour, so almost a full mile per hour faster. And my range was between 3 and 3.7 miles per hour. Next, we'll go ahead and look at my weight. I started at 171.7 pound average, and my range was 171 to 172. I only did 3 baseline data points because my weight was stable. And then you can see a pretty good decline throughout the treatment. During the 1 hour internet treatment phase, my average went down from 171.7 to 169.8. And my range was anywhere between 169 and 171. And during treatment phase 2, the 1.5 hours of internet and phone, my average dropped from 169.8 to 166.9. And my range was between 165 and 168. So there was a pretty steady decline in weight in each treatment phase. And then we'll go ahead and look at my results for daily average phone and internet usage. At baseline, I was using the internet at about 96.7 minutes per day. My phone usage was never very high. It was at 16.3 minutes per day. During phase 1, there was a sharp decrease in my internet usage down to 71.4 minutes per day, and my phone usage dropped slightly to 13.6. And then in phase 2, my internet usage actually went up a little bit. I'm assuming because we were able to earn more at that phase. And so my internet usage jumped from phase 1 at 71.4 minutes to 76.1 minutes, which was still drastically less, about 20 minutes less per minutes per day on the internet than baseline. And my phone usage stayed relatively low at 14.5 minutes. Next, we're going to look at Morgan's results.
All right. So very similar to Dan, I did not do anything before this. So my baseline for both average and range was 0 miles. For phase 1, which was the 1 hour of internet, it the daily distance of miles walked ranged from about 1 to 2.1 miles, and it was an average of about 1.6 miles a day. So that was really good, from going 0 to 1.5 miles within just a couple of days. And then once phase 2 kicked in, which was when we were able to earn another half hour of internet or phone usage, my average distance of miles went up to about 3.41 miles, and my range was anywhere from 2.2 to about 4.3 miles. So, you know, having a good reinforcer will really kick you into gear. For the daily speed, like I mentioned, my baseline was 0 for average and range. For the 1 hour of internet, my average was about 3.41 miles per hour, and it ranged anywhere from 3 to 3.8 miles per hour. The 1.5 hour internet or TV phone time, which was the speed, the average was about 4.52 miles per hour, and the range was 3.5 to 5.8 miles per hour. For body weight, which was measured in pounds, I started, my range was anywhere from about 149 to 154 pounds. And the average was about 151.4. Phase 1, which was the 1 hour of internet, was 147.1 pounds for the average, and a range from 145 pounds to around 150 pounds. Phase 2, which was the 1.5 hour of internet, phone, TV time, was an average of 143.1 pounds, and the range was 140 to 146 pounds. For the daily average use of internet and phone, which was measured in minutes, my baseline for my internet was 75.5 minutes, which was just personal time, was not work or school use. My baseline for phone usage was 55.12 minutes. Phase 1 for internet was 60.16 minutes. Phase 1 for phone usage was 40.05 minutes. And phase 2 for internet was 69.67 minutes. And phone was 49.5 minutes. So you can see that for baseline for both internet and phone, you know, it was definitely a range. You know, it went up or it went down, but mainly for internet, it didn't drop drastically except from baseline to phase 1, but then in phase 2, it went back up, which is like Dan mentioned, we got the extra minute usage that we were allowed. And then we'll go to Brittany.
Okay, so as far as distance, my baseline, the average baseline for distance was 0.21 miles per hour. I'm sorry, 0.12 miles. And then the range was 0 to 0.5 miles. When phase 1 kicked in, I had an average distance of 1 mile, and then not much of a range. It was just consistent at 1 mile. And then when phase 2 kicked in, my average distance was 1.4 miles, and then my range was about 0 to 2 miles. So there was a bit of an increase from baseline to phase 1 and then to phase 2. And then as far as speed, my baseline started out as an average of 1.07 miles per hour with a range of 0 to 2.5 miles per hour. And then once phase 1 kicked in, I had an average speed of 2.5 miles per hour. So there was an increase from the baseline. And then again, not much of a range. It was consistent at 2.5 miles per hour, which is the same at phase 2. It didn't really increase. It kind of stayed the same. And then as far as weight for baseline, there was an average of 208 pounds, and then a range from 207 to 210. And then once phase 1 kicked in, there was about a 6-pound decrease from 208 to 202 pounds, and then the range was 200 to 205. And then phase 2, I had an average of 199, and then a range from 198 to 200, which the decrease could be because I did just have a baby about a month ago, so it doesn't really reflect the amount of exercise that I was doing. And as far as the daily average phone and internet use, my baseline for internet usage was at 79.3, and then for phase 1, it was 65.2, which was a bit of a decrease, and then a slight increase in phase 2 at 67.3 minutes. And then as far as phone usage, for baseline, it was 58.12 minutes. And then a slight increase for phase 1 at 60.2 minutes. And then a slight decrease at 55.5 minutes in phase 2. And then we'll move on to treatment integrity.
All right. For treatment integrity, it can be broken down into a 5-step process, which was study design, training participants, treatment skills enactment, treatment delivery, and treatment receipt. Study design meant that we took the time to research different studies that we would want to replicate and review the approved one or the agreed upon study. The training the participants was our group members. We made sure each member of the group understood how to replicate the study and what data needed to be taken. For treatment skills enactment, we replicated the study by taking the necessary amount of data for the assigned amount of time. For treatment delivery, we monitored the process that treatment was replicated correctly. For example, making sure messages are sent to group members, making sure you have the right amount of supplies, your phone is charged, you don't have a dead battery, etc. For treatment receipt, basically we just met up after we had replicated the study and just met to make sure that we could discuss the data and each of our results. While we trained, the different steps were first developed in the design phase, and they had to be continuously assessed and incorporated into the rest of the phases. It was important to acknowledge that while these interventions can be implemented automatically, the fidelity of treatment delivery, treatment receipt, and treatment skills enactment are still important to ensure an increased likelihood of obtaining validity and reliable information to ensure appropriate implementation into the future. As far as limitations go, we had a hard time to being able to collect IOA data, so we were not able to do that. And even though each of us did the replication of the study, there's not really a way to make each other do it. So you can message each other and encourage each other, but there's not really much that you can do to hold your other participants accountable. The results of the study may be confounded by the study participants also being the study designers. It was unclear how the stool roll impacted the effort put forth to create certain trends in the data. This study, we found, does not address extending exercise time and intensity without ever increasing the reinforcement. So like you saw, from baseline to phase 1, you had an hour. From phase 1 to phase 2, you had another half hour if you did everything correctly. But past that, there wasn't really information on, if you did want to increase the study, what would be the appropriate amount of time. Is it left up to you, or is there a set amount? The participants only needed a limited amount of media time per day. Otherwise, it could result in a loss of motivation. Even though the study period was quite short, it is difficult to rule out plateaus in performance over a more extended period of time. This was our presentation, and if you have any questions, we will be here to answer them. Thank you.